Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Whatever time you're watching this, thanks for watching Common Sense Talks. Smash that like and subscribe if you're new here. Give me just a moment. If you're into sports, collectibles, opinion, news, and just like to hear what's going on from a fresh take, you found the right channel. So smash that, subscribe, and like again. And let's get things going. So today's video kind of be a little bit all over the place because it ties a few things together. Um, it's going to be about World War III, the drama that's going on right now in the world, and things that have led up to this moment that I can't believe people have missed. So I'm 39, going to be 40 years old. I was 20 years old when September 11th happened. Um, and I have a very vivid memory of the news from about that point on until now, like an elephant dang near. And it's so crazy to just remember and know what's happened between then and now, look back at the past, the history, and just see where we're headed and what's going on. So again, if you're interested in fresh takes, different points of views and opinions that you may not hear a lot, well, welcome to the channel. Smash that subscribe and like. So one thing I want to talk about, of course, the title, I'm not trying to be clickbaity. World War III, that's what a lot of people talk about, right? The end of the world or the next big one, whether it'll be kinetic or not, whether it'll be a financial war and literally like a business takeover, or is it going to be fought with, tanks and bombs and drones and stuff like that. So, but we're going to save that for a second. We're going to get into that. But I want to talk about a couple of things that I believe that has led us to this point. I think our number one and two enemies that financially and physically, if we were getting into a kinetic war, anyone could be an enemy, right? You go punch somebody, all of a sudden you're the enemy. So any human can cause harm unto another human, right? So I don't like to think of countries and people as enemies unless they're just really horrible. And even then, the people aren't always, responsible for what the dictator dictates. For example, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea. I'm sure a lot of these people there would love to get out of the predicaments that they're in, but they find themselves there. And we can all armchair quarterback, but if we were in those positions, I don't know what we'd do, right? So then there's some countries kind of like Russia, China, bunch of others that are kind of like seem like the bad guy, pretty much are to our point of view. We're probably the bad guy to them and their point of view. But that we still do business with, we communicate with, we're partners with, we do unilateral meetings and discussions with and try to shape the future. So they're not like enemies, right? Now, first thing I want to say is obviously the big dog on the block right now that we're looking at is China. Now, how did China get to the position that they're in? Well, I think it was in the late 70s, early 80s, they decided to allow China into the mainstream, into business, into the UN, into like the rest of the world. They were kind of like an embargo status like Cuba was because, they were killing millions of their people. They were just a very basic, not really third world, like a third world country, but a lot of people and a lot of stuff. But they really were kind of held back in a sense because we had put the boot on them, and so did many other countries, and kind of rightfully so. And what happened is we allowed them back into the stage in the 80s. And what happened then is they merged, in a sense, with all the big tech companies, Apple, Microsoft, all these big tech companies in the Silicon Valley that needed their products made, their phones, their computers, their laptops, all in the internet boom and age from the 80s and 90s, right? Well, the internet wasn't necessarily around, but think about video games, consoles, things with chips and computers just skyrocketed in the 80s. And then China has all these factories where they can work people for 50 cents an hour or treat them like slaves. I mean, there's the factory, if you own an iPhone, the factory where your phone is made, they have suicide nets all around the factory because the poor people live in the factory and work so bad and the conditions are so miserable they jump out of windows. So it's brutal, right, what they do to people. And if an American with, we complain 15, we want 15 minimum wage, yada yada, go back into that days, $5 7 a minimum wage, whatever. But you look at what an American wanted with the pension, with a retirement, with a medical bonus or benefits or bonus, Christmas bonus, paid time off, sick leave, and you've got another worker over here you can hire for $1.50 an hour. Well, what kind of brainiac's going to hire the American? Well, they're going to take. So then, what happens is American manufacturing, American jobs start going overseas, and it's been happening in places like Mexico too. Not trying to hate or say anything negative. My children are half Mexican. My ex-wife was, is Hispanic. So it's like, look, when you bring in or when you have to compete with a cheap influx of cheap labor, it always kills the higher end paid guys. And so, for example, and this is kind of a long roundabout thing, but and I'm talking about China doing this manufacturing wise. Now, immigrants in the United States both help and hurt. And one of the ways it can hurt, though, is when you have too many and you have all this influx, this cheap labor. And say an average American in the 50s, 60s, 40s, 70s was a painter or a carpenter and built homes. That man could probably make as much money almost as the electrician or the plumber or whoever else. They were probably very similar trades. And even though one's a little less skilled than the other, right? So those guys could feed their families and have a nice living. But then when you have people that come and they're willing to work for half of what you're going to charge, now you start losing bids. Now people start getting, oh, this guy will lay all that cement for $800 and the company over here wants to charge $3,000. And we all want to save our money. So inevitably we do that. We look for the cheaper labor. We look for the cheaper route, right? And so what that does is it drives down the value of labor for everyone around you. And China has done that in a major way for the whole world. They've punked everybody because they're like, oh, you think you guys will do it cheap? We'll do it even cheaper. Because they got like, what, how many, billion people in China at least. So it's like they can afford, in a sense, in their eyes, they have Uyghur Muslims enslaved. They have all kinds of different crazy stuff going on. And I'm sure they have, if they have prisons, right? And then I'm sure they have the prisoners working and doing things. So they're very productive in the sense that like all of our stuff is made over there and it's made cheap. That's why you can go to Walmart and pick up a tent, pick up a whatever, pick up a this or that. Almost anything you find is going to be made out of this country because it is cheaper to have a factory in Mexico or a factory in China or a factory in Brazil or wherever else make the products that you're going to make here, especially if the people, you just need them to watch an assembly line or stare at a screen and hit a button every once in a while. And then you have higher ups that help guide the process or people that drive forklifts or that do certain things, or just lifting boxes. The machines are getting so well, they're starting to do almost all of the work, but you still need human work in there. And in a lot of these cheap manufacturing places, that's how they were able to catch up. So here we are. They've been able to create themselves like a superpower in only 40, 50 years. Right. So now here we are. They've got carriers. They've got a massive Navy. They've got a Air Force, huge military. They do all of our chip production. They make all of our chemicals. They make so much stuff of ours. If they wanted to, they could just snap their fingers in America, just literally like they could be crushing us by our ball sack, just like, you know what I mean? And we wouldn't be able to do squat about it. Now, by the way, hit that like button if you guys get a chance. Hope you guys enjoy the content so far, but we're going to have a great discussion tonight really quick. And hopefully you guys might learn something. Maybe even I will. So I'm always paying attention to the comment section. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to fire them away. If you're watching this afterwards, well then, hey, leave a comment below and let me know, what do you think on the whole subject? So anyways, you have... China is just a massive competitor, and Russia is also a big, decent competitor. They're not nowhere near as powerful as us, but with them and China, you got Korea, you got Iran, you got a lot of different other little countries that band together that create a pretty powerful force. And you know, a lot of the world's things are made in these places because we've used them for so long. We don't make things here. Again, what would our pool supplies cost if bleach was made in a factory in America ran by people getting paid 15, 20 bucks an hour, when they can have a factory in China that they pay the people $1.50 an hour, and then when they dig it, when they do the chemical process or whenever they mine certain things or whatever that they need, they don't have to follow the same rules as us. They don't have the OSHA over their back. So all kinds of costs are cut, like huge, tremendously. And then their businesses are like shells of the government. So there's not as much money to go around, and CEOs and executives, so to speak. It's more, party and maybe, I'm sure some big head powerful people in these companies, but ultimately they're basically the same thing as the Chinese government, though, at that point, right? They've done their brainwashing and their takeover of their country so thorough. There's still protests and still issues that go on, but physicality wise, it would be scary to get into a conflict with China, Russia, and with all the others. That's like the doom and gloom one, but I think it's going to be financial and slower than that. Obviously, I don't think people want to end the world with nukes. I don't think we're going to attack each other like that. It might be some rogue, stupid little country that does start something crazy, though, like Iran, get their first nuke, take out Israel, and then next thing you know, we take them out, and then someone strikes us, and then, or we see them incoming, so we strike at them. Next thing you know, worst case scenario. But more than likely, we're not going to nuke China, and China's not going to nuke us preemptively. We just all have too many nukes pointed at each other. It's just not good for the planet or for their own future, right? So I think financially is the way they're going to go about doing it. Now, I said I'm going to bring up some things, right? I'm going to talk about the past really quick. You can even go back to the Federal Reserve getting off of the gold standard, this gold and silver standard. Now we're on the petrodollar. So this inflatable piece of paper that you can wipe your butt with is what the American dollar is now. And it's only worth what it is, what it's worth, because we say it is, and it's backed by our might. It's backed by our, I guess you'd say the oil, but it's backed by us because we say so to speak. And the whole world trades in the dollar, right? It's the almighty. We've set it up that way. So we're like the kings of the whole castle, and everybody else has got to play along because the world's financial system is set up like that. Now, as America is sit here crushed after this pandemic, and our economy's in shambles, and people aren't getting back to work, this is the perfect time for other countries, especially China, and with the help and, let's say, cooperation of Russia, other China. China's working with Africa right now, and they're working with a lot of other countries that America either used to work with or enemies with, and China's trying to reach out and build a lot of networking, so to speak. So they're also trying to get off the dollar, but Russia is really trying to get off the dollar big time to a different trading currency. Now, the last guy I know that did try to get off the dollar was Muammar Gaddafi, and they took him out. A little side note, when we went into September 11th, yes, I believe it was an inside job, but I don't know much more about that. This conjecture, but I know that it didn't happen the way we were told. You can Google dancing Israelis, architects, and engineers for the truth. all kinds of different stuff. There's thousands of engineers, of scientists and generals and military personnel that do not buy into the original story. But anyways, going back into that, I want to say, the America is very strong when united, but right now with our financial system and our house of cards, so to speak, is collapsing. Our country is not united, and at this moment, we're the most divided we've ever been since the Civil War. Because that could be another opportunity, not opportunity, but another thing that could happen. Not necessarily World War III, but America could tear itself apart. So, out of all the likely outcomes, I think that physical war is not conductive to any country, but I think that another country may help and may already be doing so, divide and splinter this one so that it's not as strong and powerful. So they got to attack us financially and they've got to divide us like a big family. They got to get us fighting. And it seems to be working. There's a famous video, 1970s or so, where there was a Russian KGB agent that like defected or something. He was talking about how they had like planted a lot of the stuff into the left, a lot of these weird ideas and things that were basically meant to destroy our culture. And then after that, brainwash us and get into like our educational system and raise a generation of people that just are almost basically socialists, right? And so you look at all the history that's going on right now, and if you remember the past, right? Like I have, I could bring up a couple incidents easy off the top of my head and try to like tie things together with a nice little pretty bow for you, as old ABO would say. But you have some very weird things that went on with September 11th. Let's just say that. Before that, Clinton had Osama in his sights, but he was like, they're connected. They were kind of like associates in a way. There's pictures, I think, of Osama with like the Clintons, or at least with like American diplomats, and he's been here, went to Harvard or Yale. So this is all off the top of the memory, so pardon me. But and then before that, Reagan was like one of the most beloved Republican presidents. But I'm gonna say I'm an independent right now, right? Reagan started the crack epidemic with Bush as the CIA, with Bush Sr., brought in all that cocaine, turned it into crack, sold it into inner cities, and to fund the CIA black ops stuff to like go after, Cuba and Russia and stuff like that. And this is all not tinfoil hat, where this is real truth. You can look it up. You can fact check me. It's all true. It's like, holy smokes. And then look up Operation Northwood. That was pretty much 9/11 planned 50 years ago. But anyways, America's divided. Our financial system's crushed. We put ourselves to a standstill. The economies just ultimately came to a roaring stop. You look at the stories about Biden and his son and China, and think about the stories of Biden and his son in Ukraine, like in the Russian area, on a board, on Burisma, where he didn't belong, had no business being there, getting paid hell of money. And then Biden brags that if you don't fire the guy, the prosecutor that's investigating the company that my son works at, you're not getting $500 billion. And then they fire the dude, so he gives them five, and then he brags about it on TV, like, oh, I got that dude fired. Like, if that ain't quid pro quo, I don't know what is, right? And then Trump makes a phone call like, hey, can we check into this? And they're like, you're trying to go after your opponent, and Biden wasn't even running. Like, people have such short memories. And you look at all the stuff that's been going on. Anyways, you go back and you look at the Kennedy assassination, all just the weird stuff that's been happening. Our whole history is filled with some crazy stuff. If you've read George Washington's papers, he talks about the Illuminati. I mean, what do you the old saying? Alex Jones is almost always right, And so I try to be as well. So I think that that not a physical war is coming. I'm trying to scare everybody. I'm just thinking like economically and Cold War wise, there's definitely, I think we're already in one. In history, they'll look back and say this was a Cold War II or World War III cold version, and it's going to be fought economically, it's informationally and control wise. And tie all this in, you look at companies like Facebook, YouTube, Google, all these other places that were really pretty much created and birthed here in America, the land of the free, home of the brave, and then got its financial backing and legs off of America. But now that there's these superpowers, they're basically now in China and now in all these other countries, and they can almost be like, well, you know what? We don't care what you say, because for one, you're too hooked on our services. You need us. And two, we're getting our back scratched from France and Germany and China and Russia and Australia and Canada and everywhere else. Like, we're all over the world. We rule the world. So why do we care about you? And they, of course, are not going to say it like that, but they play lip service. You know, like if you've seen the episode with Jack Dorsey and Joe Rogan and Tim Pool, I mean, and then with the other one with the girl, these guys are just like idiots. And they think you guys are too. You know, they lied to your guys' faces. So World War III, China, Russia, I believe that we're already in a Cold War of sorts, technologically wise, with hackings of systems, hackings of financial systems, the advent of cryptocurrency into the mix, the fact that you know, they don't play by the rules. So, for example, one thing, if you're a left-leaning person, I love the environment. I'm a fisherman. I love the outdoors. I want to take care of Earth. But if you're someone who thinks that we in America need to go green, you know, we do all this stuff to change our carbon footprint, okay, I can kind of understand with you. But let's do some reasoning. We are a smaller country in a sense than China. They've got more people than us. Their factories are dirtier. There's less rules and regulations. And this Paris Agreement, all the other stuff that we're signed up for to try to save the world and climate change and all that, that we're just one country. And we're one of the only countries making these major changes, along with some European countries, while we're allowing countries like China and other countries to just literally dump radioactive material in the ocean, on the ground. Who cares? Blow whatever, you know, basically diarrhea and vomit all over the earth, so to speak, right? And just putrid. And so we think that if we're over here keeping our little, on this big old ball, and we're keeping our little area clean, we don't think that what the rest of the world's going to mess with it. And the world isn't on board. They're not all going to be putting in these super fancy smancy $20,000 air conditioners that reach this SEER and that SEER. They're not all going electric and then changing out for electric stations to get across the desert or wherever, right? No, that's America, right? So I think they're trying, in my opinion, I think that if it comes down to it, I think it's going to be done financially and technologically. And it'll just be over when it's over. And there won't even be much of a fight. There won't be a point, right? Is that anytime soon? I don't think that quick. I think maybe a few years or less. Maybe even a little more. If you know, I think we're in it, the process. But that's the thing. It's just a theory, right? And I want to, you know, talk briefly about things that I think people forget, right? We learn all these things and then we forget them. We're like, oh, on to the next thing. Oh, what? Oh. And we don't even care about. Most people know more about Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, or other people than they do what's going on around them, which is sad. People need to wake up. Need to, you know, pay attention to the news, the left, the right, the middle, whatever, up, the down, the ins and the outs. People need to start caring because it's really important. Thanks, babe. I'm only going to do a quick live stream here. So anyways, I'm going to go have dinner here in a minute, but I want to finish this thought. 2008 or 2009, Jesse Ventura came out with a show, The Conspiracy Theorist, talked about 9/11, a bunch of other stuff. But he called out two things that I want to point out right now, real quick, and you can fact check me. He called that there was a planned pandemic coming to kill millions of people all around the world. And there were, like, FEMA, the camps, the body bags that were showing up. I think they were interrupted and they couldn't do the plan the way that they wanted if it was real, right? Because for one, they'd been exposed. Jesse Ventura had done a show about them. And then it's super weird that from when I could remember to about age 20 to about 9/11, nobody cared about the mosquitoes, the flu, the viruses. It was all get your flu shot if you can, right? Don't smoke. Smoking's bad. This is your brain on drugs, right? That's what they're focused on. No, nobody cared. All of a sudden, after 9/11 happens, it's this, the Patriot Act, all this control that they got, and I'm going to tie it all in, the metadata centers. I'm going to tie in Julian Assange and Edward Snowden too, believe it or not. And this all kind of started right after then. And then think about it. What was it? H1N1, swine flu, bird flu, SARS, MRSA. It was the Ebola, the Zika, West Nile. Every freaking year they scared us with a virus in preparation for this. I don't know, maybe. All I know is that there's too much semi-evidence pointing to one way, and there's like barely any of it. It came from a bat in a cave somehow. Yeah, Fauci will not gain a function research. Oh, yeah. Anyways, my point is, Jesse Ventura told us in 2009 that a pandemic was coming. A pandemic was coming. And Trump came in only 7 years after, 2016. Maybe he threw a monkey wrench. I don't know. I kind of felt out of the whole thing, you always feel that Republicans and Democrats are both evil bastards, and they're like puppets on the same master's hands. And there's somebody pulling the strings for those Republicans, the rhinos, the Mitch McConnells and stuff like that. Not the newer populist types, just like the old Democrats, the crazies that, they all work together too. But anyways, you look at every year, this is, we've been scared with something ever since the ultimate scare of them all. And in 2009, Jesse Ventura told us two things. He told us that there was a pandemic, a virus coming. And he told us our microwaves or our TVs and our computers were spying on us, and our cell phones were spying on us. And he told us if your device connected to the internet, it was spying on you. And he told us about the metadata centers. He told us about the buildings popping up across the country and about how they were filled with servers and that they were recording every phone call, every email, every text message, every photo. So if you're 12 years old and you ever send a willy pic all the way up until you're 25 and you realize maybe you want to run for president and you have this great career, but now you upset the powers that be, they have every message, phone call, and picture you've ever done somewhere saved in one of these buildings. And Jesse Ventura brought that to us in 2009. Google it. In 2010, Edward Snowden came out and admitted that the government was spying on us. And now he's has to hide in Russia because America wants to throw him in jail for telling us what Jesse Ventura already told us. Wrap your mind around that, folks. Please wake up. There's crazy stuff going on. I don't know. See, this is where I get to it. Like, I know stuff's going on. I can point to you guys stories. I can tell you guys about news articles. I can show you facts. But I cannot say for definitive that this happened, that 9/11 went this way. I cannot say that this happened this way. But I can tell you that what you're fed every day from the mainstream news is a big fat crock of shit. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below, do you think we're in a cold World War III, a Cold War 2.0? Do you think there's a big conflict? Or like me, do you think it's going to come financially and tech-wise? Or do you think we're just all tripping and everything's going to get better? Let me know in the comments below what you think, and I really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks, Daniel, for jumping on. I appreciate it, my brother. We know how each other feel. So we'll catch you guys on the next live stream, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that subscribe and like.